All right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone here. Today is October 10th, and this is the batch working group call. Please obey the CNCF Code of Conduct. We have a pretty light agenda today. I think the first item is a leadership announcement where Aldo will be stepping down as organizer. I guess nominating me. I don't know, Aldo, do you want to comment more on that?
Maybe just a quick goodbye. I'm stepping away from the working group batch for the time being. And I will still come to the next KubeCon, so I'll see some of you over there. And I'm gonna still be involved in SIG scheduling for a little while. So those two things are not changing. But yeah, my involvement in batch specifically is gonna reduce. But as you know, the working group still has three other leaders, and Kevin is joining the ranks. Hopefully, starting next week. So yeah, if you have any comments or concerns, don't hesitate to contact the current organizers or the steering committee. But yeah, thank you everybody for participating, being so welcoming. Certainly had a really good time building all these features for batch, and I'm sure it's gonna keep growing. So thank you.
Yeah, as I said in the email, thank you for all your work, Aldo. You've been really great leading this, as with the others, of course. But all right,
Yeah,
and so
I still be around in the community, or you're stepping out from different projects as well.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I still be around in the community overall, in the batch and Kubernetes scheduling moving forward.
Yes, as I said, I'm staying in SIG scheduling for a while.
All right, sounds good.
Yes.
all right. I guess the next item on the agenda is Andre. Do you want to share your screen or anything?
Yeah, let's maybe have a quick chat. Just let me ping folks if they can join us.
All right, I gave you host access so you can share.
Yep,
if you need to.
Yeah, let me share my screen. All right, so let me maybe go quickly before we can start the discussion to like the idea of this proposal. So I think we started this couple of weeks ago. So the main idea is to extend the job set capability to support job sequence and ability to execute multiple jobs within the special condition. So as an example, like we see the use cases, especially for fine-tuning use cases, then when users usually do some sort of initialization part, when basically they maybe want to download the pre-trained model or maybe data set. Then this model data set needs to be distributed across multiple workers. And then they want to consume the output results using the sidecar or some sort of the exporter or checkpointer during the distributed training script. So I think the main idea is to have a startup policy today in the job set. And today, job set startup policy, let me give you some example. I think we have something here. So the main idea is right now in a job set, users can specify in-order startup policy, which means this job set will run an order, but it will wait until the replicated jobs will be in a ready status. So which means like when the driver is ready and the container has been started, the whole job set, all other like jobs will be created. But the thing is like in the sequence, usually we kind of waiting not for already condition, but for succeeded. As an example, let me show you one example in this cap. So for example, this kind of job set. So if we want to fine tune an LLM on distributed like multiple workers, we're usually going to have like an initializer script where users define which model they want to use, which data set they want to use, and then they have a distributed training job, which basically replicate across multiple replicas. And then we kind of using this volume from the initialization step to do the fine tuning. So what we want to do, the proposal is like we want to extend startup policy to support different rules. For example, like we introduce this new API called rules, where users can just explain what kind of conditions they're waiting for the specific jobs, for the specific replicated job. Like in this specific example, we say that we have two jobs. One is initializer job, and the second job is trainer node. And the trainer node job will wait until initializer will be in a succeeded condition, and then we will process to the next available job. So the main idea is again like to not. So our main goal is to not replicate what workflow engine is doing. Like for example, we're not going to give users more advanced capabilities like direct acyclic graphs or ability to construct a workflow. And we only want to give them ability to run the jobs within the sequence, like similar to what we have today with the startup policy, but not waiting for the ready condition, but waiting for the succeeded condition. So one of the also examples I can show when, for example, we might have more than one job within the loop. Like for example, this job set is using API for training, and again, initializer job for initialization. And the main idea is to actually run the initializer job first, where we do again like pre-download pre-trained model, download data set, and then we have the API type of job when we have a launcher and the trainer node. And the launcher, we will wait until this job will be ready to start to actually run the API run commands within this distributed training workload. So this also could be useful within this new API. Before I jump to the API details, maybe any questions so far?
I have an unrelated question, but I'll wait till the end of the, I mean, it's related, but it's like tangential.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so let me maybe show you quickly like what we want to extend with the startup policy. So today, again, startup policy only has a one parameter called startup policy order, where basically users can specify any order or in order. And we proposing to introduce new parameter called rules, which allows to have like more flexibility in which condition we're going to wait until process on the next job. And this rules is going to have the list of the target replicated jobs and the specific condition for which we want to wait. So as I showed you before, the idea is to, in the startup policy, introduce this parameter, and here we can just target what kind of condition we're waiting for which type of jobs. Yeah, so there are a couple of open comments on the cap, and also I think one of the important things we probably need to discuss about the quota management, because like job set right now integrated with queue, and I think the question is like how we should manage the quota for this type of the sequence, because sometimes we don't want to lock the GPU resources when the initializer job is running, and the initializer job can run maybe for 1 hour, especially if the model is large. And right now, in a given situation, we have to locked in the whole resources for the all available jobs until actually being dispatched by queue. So these things, I think we need to talk about maybe out of scope of this proposal, but maybe just have some conversation what kind of ideas we have, because I think the main I think if we can design the approach when we can manage the quota per job within the sequence will be useful, but the question is like how to make it supported with queue. So this is the one thing which is unclear right now, I believe. Yeah, another thing. So yeah, let's maybe jump to the questions, and then maybe we can discuss the open comments from all of you. Yeah, go ahead, Vanessa. Do you want to go first with your question?
Oh gosh, so I have two questions. The first is kind of general, and the second is more related to MPI. So the first is something that I've been thinking about in this context. And we have things here like we're targeting replicated jobs, and whether it's a startup policy or an execution policy, and we're very notably saying, this is not a workflow, this is not a DAG. But it kind of smells like we're going in the direction of something that's more akin to a state machine, in the sense that there are triggers and actions that you take. And I'm trying to think beyond this particular KEP and try to think like, okay, let's say that we implement it in this particular way. What other next thing are we going to want in it to implement that's basically going to have like, okay, when I see this happen, I want to do this thing. And if we can anticipate that, maybe that's the model that we should be thinking about designing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think because right now, we say that we only support sequence, but what if like tomorrow we want to like introduce another state machine, right? Another like ability to process to the next job, right? And how are we going to orchestrate those sequences, right? So I don't know if we want to define some sort of the constraint or like where we should stop in terms of the things we want to support, right?
Do we need to define
Yeah.
that right now? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
what we have so far, like startup policy, is pretty much similar to what this extension is about. But other, like,
Yeah.
instead of waiting for a ready status, we're waiting for a successful status. So we're not deviating too much from the what exists right now. And yeah, we're making it clear that this is not like an arbitrary graph or like a DAG. It's a sequence covering like a decent, like we've done something similar with Q, right? Like for example, we have namespace. I remember like Aldo, right? Like where we constrain like which local queues can use this cluster queue, right? And we have a namespace selector on the cluster queue to define that. It's basically policy enforcement. We didn't go and say, okay, we're going to implement a full-fledged policy enforcement system within queues. Okay, this is a very common use case. So we had support for it. And we said, if you want something more advanced, you need to install Gatekeeper, right? If you want to implement more advanced policies like, around who can use what in this system. To me, it's the same like, idea. Supporting a sequence for number of replicated jobs is reasonable. It's not like, we're not implementing a full-fledged orchestrator here for workflow. It's a common use case. We can, support. We capture like, I don't know, 90% of the use cases of the, what we're looking for. Beyond that, you have to use something more advanced. I guess this is the way that I'm looking at it.
Was there discussion about kind of the branding or putting it under startup policy versus execution policy, deprecating one versus? I know that was.
We discussed this with Daniel and with Kevin and Abdullah in the threads. So I think the main idea is, as Abdullah mentioned, we just try to expand startup policy with a new condition. Introducing these target replicated jobs. I think I introduced this because I was thinking about API use cases and when the single condition might not work. But eventually, since we're just doing the same what we have today with the startup policy, but just adding new parameter, I think we kind of like came up with the conclusion that maybe it is easier to just have this, rules parameter within the single API instead of having another API which we need to maintain and then deprecate the startup policy, right? Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, so I left some comments there, but basically, I mean, one thing I want to be careful on is like the startup policy and order is an existing feature, and we probably would want a new enum for this, and then what because we don't want to break any existing users. I also do wonder I would like us to require that all of the replicated jobs must be specified in the API because there is
Yeah.
some vagueness in the last job of what it waits for.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I actually was thinking exactly the same right now. I think we should actually enforce users to specify all the replicated jobs. I think the question is what we should put. Of course, we can default them, right? Like for example, like if we, but I think the problem with the default, like for which condition we're going to wait. So I think in that case, do we need to specify the latest job within this rules? Because I think the latest job will not wait for any condition, right, to be succeeded, right? Like, should we enforce to specify all of the jobs other than latest? What are your thoughts on this? In this target replicated jobs parameter?
But that's fair, actually. But the last one doesn't
Yeah.
really need any specification.
Yeah, exactly. Because when we have this, basically, right now we're starting these jobs one by one. Like basically starting them how they've been created, like how they've been written in the YAML, right? And we have a slice here. And I think the idea is, of course, like we wait for condition for this job, right? Then we wait condition for that job, right? Like for this condition, I think we don't need to have anything. So I think we need to discuss, or maybe I can put some initial ideas, like which jobs needs to be defined there. And I guess like they needs to be also unique, right? So we need to have a specific validator to make sure like user don't accidentally put replicated job A with the two different spaces, right, within this slice. So maybe we can think about maybe something more optimized API. So because we have like uniqueness of the job names, right? And in the slice, right? And also the condition should be unique for the specific job, right? Yeah. So I think we can. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I think that sounds good. Although has had his hand up for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. I'll go ahead.
I'm kind of wondering if it can be simplified by either, I guess I see two options, either putting the, what is it called? Wait for replicated job status ready, put that into the replicated job struct,
Yep.
or just removing these target replicated jobs and asking for one rule.
Yeah. I think it's
Which,
one of the, yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, kind of enforcing, yeah, and again that would enforce that you have one rule for every job, every replicated job.
I think
Yeah.
one of the idea that Abdullah I think proposed, right, in this PR.
Yeah.
I think we end up that's kind of be not consistent with other policies, right?
I mean,
Mhm.
can we? What are the other policies that follow this pattern and why? Maybe
Yeah.
it's like different. Can you search for target? What is it? Target? Is that target? We have.
So yeah, we have failure policy, success policy, like startup policy under the job set spec, right? Today.
Yeah. But that's slightly different, I think. For success policy,
I think failure policy does have a targeted replicated job. I'm pretty sure. Could you?
Yeah. Failure policy. So here it has the name of the policy, right? And the target, like which job we're targeting here, right? For this specific.
So I think, so coming back to queue and quota,
Mhm.
what we need is a clear way to know at which state we are, to know which jobs are running at every point. Right now, that's not easy to, like, by looking at the API, how would you know at which state you are, or the job set is, and which jobs should be accounted for? It's not immediately obvious how to build the, let's say, the steps out of the YAML. So my ask would be that the API is easy to process to get these like blocks. You know,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
block
So
1, this is block 2, block 3.
I think
Should
the
be
key,
spread out easily to, just to be able to grab what's the block, what are the jobs in that step.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think queue will require to process the status of job set, because of course you can check the status and check like in which condition you are right now. Because for example, like if you have another policy and if all of the jobs in the stage have been succeeded, then you're on the second stage. But you need to like see, so queue needs to track this status and also needs to track the startup policy parameter, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
it is for queue, but also for a user, right? Like,
Yeah, that's right. But we don't
so
want to introduce. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, right now it doesn't look like it will be easy to interpret what is going on, at which stage we are, and which jobs are actually running or supposed to be running right now.
So for Q, why is it not sufficient just to evaluate the quota when the job set is created and just go that route, like rather than trying to emit it in the right order?
It is sufficient, but it is wasteful, right? If the first step doesn't require GPUs, but the second step does, why would we be blocking the entire quota or the GPU quota? That's why it's useful to know what's going on, what's running right now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that
So
makes sense.
So I wonder if
maybe
we want to integrate, like, have replicated job being, well, that's not going to work all the time, right? But there's like replicated job as a queuing entity in queue. Um,
right. So we need kind of like a wrapper that describes the steps. So maybe that's maybe that something closer to that. Like this is block 1, so it's jobs 1 to 3. Well, we can do it by name. But A, B, and C are in order, but in order. How is it called? Like in order. They start in order, but they run together, right? Then you have E, F running later as a second step. That seems easier to read and easier to process from another controller.
Maybe, so okay, if we have like succeeded and ready condition, right? So I think we can, if we introduce step parameter even within job set status, right? We can say in which step of the replicated job right now job set is running, right? Because when we have succeeded everywhere, it's easy, right? Like basically you can say, like, taking this example, right? If I have this not ready but also maybe succeeded. So the first step initializer, the second step is launcher, the third step will be trainer node, right? I think the tricky part will be what if I have different, ready and succeeded condition. So after succeeded step, do we want to have like step when two jobs are running at the same time? not jobs, but two replicated jobs, right? And within the replicated jobs, we're also going to have like multiple jobs, right? But I think that the thing is like we just need to get the name of replicated jobs, right? Because the group of this job is actually had the same name, right? So maybe good.
How do you deal though with conditional logic where one of the conditions may not happen? So let's say you have different replicated jobs, one set that would happen based on succeeded, one based on failed. Only one of those might happen, but then up front you have to ask, for example, queue for both cases, or is there some situation where you could, basically request you could break apart job set into different requests and request what you need when you need it. But then the issue with that is like if there's actually a long waiting time, well then you get like an HPC system where your first set of jobs completed and then you're gonna be waiting a long time for the next set to get to the nodes.
Right. So following up on what Vanessa just said, right. So right now it doesn't. I don't know if you will prevent those kind of scenarios where like if succeeded, run this. If failed, run this other thing. I don't know if that's
No,
possible.
good.
So that's one. But back to what Vanessa said is, do you do you rather queue all the steps together, but keep the second and third block, or only create the steps in queue once they are actually runnable, which means that you have to wait a longer time for each step. Like your step one finishes, and then only then you enter the queue, so you have to wait for a long time. And that brings us back to how do we know what's going to run later so that we can queue it ahead of time and have your spots reserved, but not necessarily running yet. So
in a queue, usually, so when you got these resources being allocated, do they store somewhere? Do they have like some queue of the? So how usually it's been dispatched right now? So if you have some resources that needs to be allocated at this point of time, right? Do you have some sort of the priority classes? How do you put those resources in the queue?
yeah, there are priority classes, but once you are in the same priority, it's like FIFO.
FIFO, okay. So basically, but can you kind of pre-allocate resources for the workloads that will be created in the future?
Not today, but that's something we have always thought about.
Put them like in a sort of like queue, right? And then make them available based on their priority classes and the FIFO, right? How they put it in the queue, right? So
right, the idea would be, hold my space in the queue at this timestamp. But if while I don't tell you that I'm ready, just don't schedule me yet. But once you're ready, because your timestamp is much older, you jump ahead, right? Creating those, so that's why creating those steps from the beginning could be very useful. And I don't see a way to achieve that with the current API. Or maybe it is possible, but it's kind of hard to process.
I'm not. You have a hand. Go ahead.
I mean, we can talk about Q like as a follow up, because right now we're not changing anything with regards to Q, right?
Yep.
You can still like although it's not efficient, it can be a follow up to resolve that issue.
I know we don't have to implement it right now, but the API needs to be ready for it.
I think I like this idea of having the stage and the status. So maybe this is something which can easily implement, right? Because I think for users, as you said, right now it's extremely hard to actually understand what's happening within the job set, especially when you have a sequence. That is why I was thinking about the conditions. The problem with the conditions, they are just immutable. So when you have a condition, you cannot modify it. you can probably modify the message, but it is not how Kubernetes works, right? That is why maybe phase or some sort of the status would be interesting, where we can indicate which jobs are running right now, right? Or maybe group of the replicated jobs, right? Maybe it's initializer and the second group is launcher plus trainer node, right? I think this is what we can maybe do, right?
I guess. Sorry, go on. Other people have.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have the job set replicated status on the status field that I think you could look at to, like you could correlate that with the API and the status to see whether or not which things are all ready or not. I think you would have to look at the status to know like the actual progress of the API anyway. So I don't really know.
Yeah. I think still for the user, it's probably, I think it's better to have a condition, but the problem with the condition, I think it won't solve our issue because it's immutable, right? Because like from the user perspective, like it's very hard for them to really, like they, of course they can check the status, they can check the what is order, and then they can see what's happening, right? But maybe making them a specific field where they can indicate what is the status of replicated of the job set right now, or maybe not status. I think we can think about better name, or would be useful. Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
like it's sorry, go on, Vanessa.
I do think it's important to consider Q earlier on, and this because this is the general problem of you have, not groups of jobs in a job set, but actually different groups of jobs that are sort of being orchestrated together. And on the one hand, yes, that might be the responsibility of a workflow manager, but at least for like HPC, we have the concept of a reservation. The idea of a reservation is that it's going to cycle through the scheduler and it's going to kind of gain priority in having that timestamp. But if it's not, if you get to the top of the queue and it's not ready, it's going to kind of go back down. I guess if we don't consider queue and then this design is implemented, then it would have to be sort of an unoptimal approach where you say like, okay, well, it could run A or B, or A will run and then it could be B or C depending on whether it succeeded or failed. So we just have to ask for all of the resources that we could potentially need in that, the union set. And that's not ideal because, of course, let's say that one case you need these really expensive, hard to get GPUs, then your entire job is going to wait. But in the other case, if you have this reservation, I think the worry that I have is there's a high potential there for abuse. So why wouldn't, if there's this concept of a reservation, why wouldn't someone just always have a reservation for some work, that they could do in the future, and then they could just always cancel it if they didn't need to use it. And so that's why there's things like fair share and, checks and balances to make sure that people don't abuse that. And I'm not sure which of those things are on the roadmap for Q or if they're not on the roadmap for Q. But I do think this is important to think about because there are going to be, even if this isn't implemented in like JobSet, there are going to be like workflow tools that are going to need to submit different pieces of work that work together. And you ideally wouldn't want them to be days apart. I have no idea about the how easy it is to get resources on the different clusters, but I can tell you in HPC you can take up to like a week to run your jobs. So
yeah, I know we have a proposal for supporting Argo within Q, right? I know this slightly different, as Aldo mentioned, compared to what Argo integrations we might have. But I think if we require some changes on the job set side for this, maybe have a more, discrete status or more, better information from the controller, we can definitely do so in the future, right? So I don't think it's because the only thing we need is what is the current phase and the timestamp. I don't know if the job set should propose a timestamp to queue, like, or maybe time out some sort of how much time I could wait for this stage of the job. I don't know these things. Like we haven't got a chance to discuss it. Yeah, but I believe this is similar to problems we will see with the Argo right now, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's something I was wondering too. I don't know, Yuki, if I think all that to drop. Do you know how Argo workflows would be solving? Like if they're a good pattern to follow?
Yeah, actually, so we are discussing how we can support our workflow in the queue side. But so we did not reach agreement solutions how to support our workflow. So in the current idea, we will aim to use pod scheduling gates to suspending each task in the arc workflow. But I guess this approach does not apply to job set because job set deploy multiple batch job rather than pods, right? So as Aldo mentioned previously, we may need to create two workload resources, each for batch job within job set. But it's challenging to create workload object each for job set because so maybe so I guess if we create workload object each job set, we need to parent workload object to store the relationship between all batch job within job set to support queue-specific partial admission feature or dynamic admission policy, blah, blah, blah. And so.
What about job readiness gate, right? You have job
Yeah,
readiness.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, actually, we discussed about job readiness gates, but today's Kubernetes does not provide the feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in that case, we can put all those jobs in the readiness stage, right? Basically, similar to pod scheduling gates, right? And then when the queue needs to dispatch other jobs, we can just, change those gates, right? And those jobs will be scheduled.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I was discussing about job readiness gate with Mihal, one of Q approver. But so we did not reach the agreement since we were wondering if we really want to implement the job readiness gate to core Cube API. Maybe so if we want to implement job readiness gate to core Cube API, we need to prepare one more concrete real use cases. So I guess this job set use cases is slightly insufficient, right?
Yeah, I think that could be a good use case. So either way, I mean, if we go the job readiness gateway, I think it would probably be some field in the job spec, which means that the API, like that, at least it should work that way. We already have a problem with the startup policy is not actually obeying it. Q is going to get all the resources up front currently. I would lean towards, like, if we go that route, I guess we can be confident, or that there could be a possible integration for this, and it doesn't have to block this feature. I don't know how strong the use case for Q is. Like, it is wasteful, but I don't even know. Like, we're building this feature for the Kubeflow V2 training operator, which Andrehan Yuki, you already know. I don't know when the Q integration for that is here, so I feel like it's okay to go forward with this proposal.
Generally, we do have a path, right? Like we're talking about like how Q. We just need to think about like the status that we need to reflect on the offset status, so that Q can capture that and properly, does its job, right?
Yep.
I mean, I'm more concerned at this point about the API. I have to stop pretty much now, like in 1 minute. Do we want to continue discussion on the cap?
Yeah, I think we have a few follow-ups, right? So first of all, I think we discussed that we need to somehow have an API to indicate all the jobs within the replicated jobs, right? Another follow-up is to think about do we want to have another enum for startup policy, as Kevin mentioned, right? To not break existing jobs. I think
yeah. I mean, I don't think we would break it. Like, if you don't set any rules, then the default is what the default is right now. So
every rules, right? Yeah. So
yeah, and then it's ready, right?
yes,
Like it's what the current behavior.
yes, the default behavior. Yeah, and I think the third follow-up, do we need another status for right now, or we can do this as the next integrations after this initial support, right? Anything else I'm missing? Like what we... Oh, I think
Yeah,
we want to put it under replicated jobs, right? Like here, instead of having target replicated jobs, right? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I have to drop. I'm sorry. We can discuss on the cap. I think we're on a good path. I'm still not sure if we want to continue with the targeted replicated jobs. It's much cleaner to put it in the replicated job. I feel that this use case is different, like because we are dependent on the sequence that is defined in the replicated jobs. So that's another thing that is going to be quite odd, like when you put them at the top.
Yeah.
It feels cleaner to me. I don't know. It feels like we're trying to put a circle and a square with this one, or like square. Yeah.
Federal policy has the same problem, right? Because federal policy also, but federal policy doesn't need to be on every job, right? So yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, Abdullah, you just need a bigger square, it'll work.
It's true. It's
There's
just
a YouTube video for that where the girl's watching and she's like, it goes in the square hole, and he's like, it's in the same one every time, and she's like, her face goes from like confused to just like horrified. Highly recommend. Anyway, sorry.
we can discuss on the cap. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
It would be good also to have a section on Q, even if we're not solving it, or it's just like, okay, what we've discussed, and okay, this is how we could do it. Options.
Yeah, I'd like to talk more about kind of this idea of reservations and priority and some of the HPC-ish kinds of things. I had one more, so yeah, Abdullah, you can drop off. I had one more kind of dumb question that I was thinking about recently, and it's sort of it triggered what my thinking, because the example you showed was an MPI job. And so there was discussion about basically the MPI operator moving into Kubeflow training. And my question is that because most of the industry use case is actually for using MPI for this kind of training workloads, or is it basically because of the design, having the launcher worker design, and that being the primary design that's sort of afforded for that? Because very notably, MPI mostly is not used for AI. So to me, it feels awkward to move the entire project for the MPI operator into something that is very specifically for AI use cases. So that's my question.
Yeah, I can add my 2 cents, but I think you also can add your thing. So I know that some frameworks actually use MPI for distributed training. Like, for example, MLX.
You definitely can. It's not that it's not a use case, but like in terms of use cases, there's like this many things that HPC does with MPI, and then there's like training. It's so yeah.
So I think So I think different. So some frameworks like PyTorch, right? They have their own distributed machinery inside, which build like inside PyTorch distributed, right? And this is how they do distributed training, right? I think some frameworks, like I know DeepSpeed also leveraging like host files from API, right, to start their jobs, right? I think there are also, like as we discussing with Yuki, some on-prem specific users using MPI instead of using torch run, for example. So you could like specific on the benchmark side of things, like why people prefer to use MPI. Is it just for convenience, or is it because of the performance?
My question is more along the lines of like in the future when someone comes to Kubernetes and they want to run an MPI simulation for molecules that has nothing to do with AI, and we direct them to Kubeflow, the training, it won't make sense. I mean, like maybe we'll be able to fit into that design given that you have a launcher worker where the launcher, has the host file or whatever, but I'm wondering if the branding and the organization makes sense. Or if it's just the case that like there aren't enough maintainers on the MPI operator and it's easier to move it into Kubeflow so that it has that structure around it.
Yeah, we try. So Kubeflow, I mean, there are many things like happening on the Kubeflow, right? But I think we have many HPC people in the community. And again, we try to structure those runtimes to make it not only feasible for like AI use cases or training use cases. So Yuki is trying to build this extensible framework which can support other runtimes like Slurm, for example, like maybe not even using job sets, right? Maybe using other policies for different use cases. And that is why I think for MPI users, even outside of ML world, this also would be useful. Naming problem that right now I have a train job, right? Which is using these runtimes. Maybe we can think about what other kind of entity we can introduce rather than train job, right? In the future, which also using this runtime, because runtime concept is kind of abstracted, right? You can basically define anything there, right? And runtime also, we kind of like trying to design this framework to make it extensible to even support your custom plugins within the runtime. And maybe next time we can speak about it more, to maybe even register your custom CRD within the training operator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Vanessa. I always thought it was weird that people that are running, computational fluid dynamics have to install a Kubeflow training operator to run an MPI job. And I know my employer has an example of that somewhere in our repos, and it's always pretty weird to me. I think we discussed this a lot on the original Kubeflow training operator KEP. I know there were a lot of questions about the MPI operator version 2 and like how that's going to live, and that's kind of, I wasn't too sure where that ended up or if that discussion actually happened.
I don't think it did. I looked back at that particular discussion and it kind of just stopped. And yeah, we can have this at a future meeting, but one thing that I don't know if this belongs in the batch working group. That's why I wanted to come to the Kubeflow ML. I forget what it's called. There's so many Kubeflow meetings that I went to the wrong one this week and I feel really silly. But I wanted to kind of bring a lot of the applications and simulations and proxy apps that we are running in HPC and actually implement them using job set or using whatever abstraction that we are currently working on in Kubeflow. And then I think by doing that, we'll get a better sense of like where they fit, how they fit, if they fit, what other abstractions are needed, so that there's space in this, this software framework for all these different kinds of things that even if under the hood they have kind of a similar design, like a launcher and workers, it still makes sense from a branding standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea for a future topic. The short answer, in the serving working group, I think Abdullah and others actually created like a catalog of like useful cases where people like are running like, Llama 3, and they'll have like at least some example YAMLs that people could share to kind of build that. And they build it as like, I think, a Kubernetes SIG sub project where people could add that in. I think that could be like a good idea to kind of collate that. Or I know you have kind of a, sorry, Vanessa, I think you have like a general like research computing repo that like kind of collating a lot of these use cases could be helpful. But I think it's an idea for a future topic that we should definitely bring up about, because I do think that is interesting. It's very hard to know how do you actually run like scientific workloads on Kubernetes. Like I don't actually know where to go to find that off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's definitely let's definitely maybe have a conversation next Wednesday once we have this, training working call, like maybe even like when it's, Pacific time friendly. I like to call. So maybe we can also do the batch working group. Yeah, because we want like more HPC folks to come in, because I mean right now MPI operator is living there under this Kubeflow GitHub, and the question is like, yes, we have some maintainers, but it's mostly, like driven by, few folks. We want to, like have this extensible and maybe think about whether we can introduce catalog, maybe we can introduce some customizable runtimes for people who want to, try out this HPC and simulation use cases, right, within Kubernetes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely,
is
that's a great idea. I will be there. I will go to the right meeting next week.
All right.
Yeah, sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, yes.
All right.
Good.
Okay, well, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Anything else we want to talk about right now? Or...
I think that was the end of the agenda. It's, yeah, if not, thank you all for coming. And this was a good meeting. And we'll see you in the next one.
Sounds
Thank you, Ron.
good.
Yeah.
And apologies that I don't know why, but it disappeared from my calendar. And I really appreciate that you pinged me, Andre, because it wasn't on my calendar, and like this meeting is important to me. And I was like, wait, it's Thursday and it's 4 p.m. and oh no.
Yeah, exactly.
So I re-added it, so I'll be there in the future.
It's better to duplicate.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Alrighty,
you.
folks. Thanks everyone.
See you. See you
Bye.
around.
Bye, everyone.
See you.